Being a doctor of Oriental medicine means that I'm trained as far as understanding Western medicine, which is traditionally what we all experience here as far as clinics and our general practitioners or PCPs, as well as understanding the alternative to what we can do naturally to help the body come into balance. That covers a lot of ground. What I usually consider, there's three categories that a doctor of Oriental medicine should look at, and that's the body, the mind, as well as the spirit, the emotional component. So, and that covers a lot, Billy. That's nutrition, that's exercise, that's frame of mind. But as a physician, we're looking at what's the patient's perspective and how do we help that individual get back to balance. And whatever the case may be, whatever may bring them into our offices, doctors of Oriental medicine see a vast array of different patients, from pain management, which is what traditionally our medicines here in the hospitals, they refer to us as, well, you can help with pain management. But the truth is, we do a whole lot more. We encompass not just pain, but doctors of Oriental medicine are actually trained to prevent pathologies, disease, catch it before it gets too far out of hand. We're in different facilities around the nation. We're in military posts. A lot of people don't know that, but every military installation, as far as the Army is concerned, has an acupuncture physician on it. So this medicine is legitimate. And most hospitals are supposed to be integrated with alternative medicines, which is something that I was trained to do. And my training happened down in Florida. So sorry for the big answer, Billy, but there's a lot of ground to cover, man.
Yeah. And so you're a licensed doctor though, right?
I'm a licensed acupuncture physician. Unfortunately, in the state of Oklahoma, there is no licensure for acupuncture physicians. This is spooky. My license and my medical degrees all came from the state of Florida, where we were trained to do both Eastern and Western medicine, internal and external, from endocrinology to psychology and that pain management we were talking about. So there's 49 states that recognize acupuncture physicians, and there's one state that doesn't, Billy: Oklahoma.
That's crazy.
It is insane. Yes,
that's really crazy. That explains a lot already. So yes. let me ask you this: you mentioned acupuncture. What exactly is acupuncture?
Now, acupuncture is, we use acupuncture points, acupuncture locations that are found throughout the body, and any of your viewers out there, they can go online and they can Google acupuncture and meridians and channels. Well, our training is to stimulate those specific points in the acupuncture meridian system to get a certain response. So that's acupuncture is scary for most people, because you say acupuncture and they think needles. I'm not doing it. That's what I hear from so many people. I'm not doing it. When in fact, the needles are called filiform or hair-like. They're extremely fine needles that are solid, and there's little to no pain with the insertion. That's the other thing that a lot of people get confused on. They think it's painful, but with acupuncture, we're stimulating specific points to get a certain response, usually a chemical response in the body that involves all kinds of hormones, and we'll get into that. I know you got more questions about it.
Yeah, tons. So you said it stimulates things. Now, specifically, you've had some success with fertility treatments using acupuncture as a fertility therapeutic treatment for infertility. Is that correct?
That is correct. About 5 years ago, my wife and I moved from Florida to Oklahoma. I'm an Oklahoma native. That's what brought us here. And there was a clinic that was kind of on its last leg, and we were fortunate enough to be in the position to purchase it. At that time, I was introduced to some fertility issues that were happening here in Oklahoma, and was quickly linked up with a clinic out of St. Louis, Missouri. Now, from that first few months of being in business, we were working with patients having fertility issues and sending them back and forth to St. Louis. But in the process, we became so successful and had so many patients looking for help that the clinic in St. Louis, Missouri moved another clinic to Tulsa to support that process. We've had thousands of ladies come through, families trying to increase their population, just by getting pregnant and trying to grow. So we've had tons of success. I've got lots of success stories. There's lots of hope out there when some things seem like they just don't work in traditional medicine. We need to keep looking, and that's where I think that's brought us together, is that search for alternative. What can I do when everything else says there's a problem? And that's where we found tons of success, from really minor things to things that seemed insurmountable. Like the patients were just completely hopeless, and they were going, I know this is my last ditch effort. Can you do anything? And we've been able to help many families grow, some a little bit bigger than they expected. We have had some twins that happen to come into the world, and some very happy mothers, happy fathers, but tons of success. Yes, Billy, we're doing great in that area. And especially with the world we're in today, there's a lot of things that we can discuss based on what are some of those obstacles and how are we getting success with those treatments.
Now, can this treatment be done on both men and women?
Absolutely, it can. And in fact, it's necessary for many couples to stick together on this. A lot of times, being a doctor of oriental medicine also encompasses the dialogue that happens with the patients and the patient's environment. And a lot of times, it's not just the wife, right? It's not just the female, it's the male. And we have to come together and create the right environment that is full of hope, that is encouraging, and that most of all, this is a joyful time when you're trying to create a family. So sometimes there's stress, or there's fears, or there's anxieties that come from both parties. Someone feels insignificant or feels like they're not worthy of the other partner based on fertility. And we have to talk about that. We have to get that out in the open, and we have to get that area taken care of, because a lot of times it's a misunderstanding, or it's just the wrong mindset.
So you're not just doing acupuncture, you're doing whole body reset, psychological, right down to the core issues. And the acupuncture plays into that, but you're also looking at kind of the holistic approach to the whole situation.
Absolutely. We have to take everything into consideration. I found that earlier in my career, people were coming in, they were saying, I have this problem. Can you fix this? Can you fix this? And I could do acupuncture, but the individual wasn't taking care of themselves. In other words, acupuncture only does so much, but we have to talk about the other things when that patient walks out the door, when that lady walks out and goes home, or when she goes to work. Is the environment too stressful? Is cortisol too high in the body? In other words, stress hormones, that can hurt a pregnancy, that can hurt fertility considerably. It changes the hormones around. So when we're looking at an individual, when we're trying to figure out what's going on, what's your perspective, what's your life like, it's not just a few needles. It's a whole lot. There's a comforting, there's hope building, as well as there's acupuncture that reinforces it. But there's a whole new understanding that comes to this individual's life. You can't just say one day, I want to get pregnant in this world we live in. There's too much stress. Everyone's overwhelmed. And that has to be discussed, and that has to be managed, because the last thing what we want to do is to have an unhealthy pregnancy. You can still get pregnant, but sometimes that baby may not be healthy. And we need to figure out, how do we have the best pregnancy with the best odds of that child being perfectly healthy? And that's what every parent wants.
So whenever a client comes to you, or a patient comes, let me start with, whenever a patient comes to you and says, hey, we're struggling with infertility, what's the first things that you go through with that patient?
Well, the first things is, when I'm interacting with that patient, is how is their answer? How's their body language? Are they nervous? Are they stressed out? And I do an intake, a very in-depth intake of, it's asking, the intake forms itself is asking about the patient's psychological perspective, their digestion, their sleep, their work, their previous medical history. What are they doing now? What's got them into? See, a lot of times, Billy, people will show up and they'll say, I'm trying infertility, it's not working. What do you do? And so I'll always have to ask, well, what have you done? What does your lab work look like? How are your hormones, if it's a lady we're talking to? As well as, has the man been tested? Have we tested out all these factors? And then we get into the depths of what's bothering you, what's on your mind. And one of the things that I have to really get into with a lot of ladies is, how much pressure are you putting on yourself? Is there a date and time that you've expected to get pregnant? Now, in other words, I'm trying to figure out psychologically, how much pressure does this woman have on herself? And how's her support group? How's her husband involved? Is he involved? Because if not, we have to bring all that in. So there's about 45 minutes to an hour that I spend with the patient on the initial intake, the consult, and I'm trying to figure all this out. And doctors of Oriental medicine are trained to look at you from head to toe. So figuring out, what are you presenting with? There's a lot of outside factors, from endocrinology to the psychology of it, how individuals are presenting and speaking.
Okay.
How are they communicating? There's a lot there, Billy.
Yeah, there really is. So just side question. So when someone is considering this as a treatment, should they just look for any acupuncturist?
No, no,
Like if they see like, oh, there's an acupuncturist on the side of the road at this place,
yeah.
Should they go there?
That's a definite no, especially if they're out there on the street corner flipping a sign. That's probably not a good sign at all. Here in the state of Oklahoma, I always tell patients, if they're looking for acupuncture, because we have patients that come from Texas, Colorado, Kansas, Arkansas, Texas, they're coming from all over. And I usually say, look, I don't want you driving very far. Can you find an acupuncturist locally? And they'll always ask me, well, what do I look for? And I'll say, well, you want to look them up online and go to their website. And you also want to make sure that they've been to medical school, that they're licensed, and check out their reviews. Look and try to figure out exactly who they are. And the other thing is, what do they specialize in? Because doctors of Oriental medicine or acupuncture physicians, we all have different special interests. Some are just pain management. Some are cancer recovery. There's all kinds of different acupuncture physicians or doctors of Oriental medicine. You need to figure out, what does that acupuncture physician look for? What do they specialize in? What are they rated for as far as their reviews? But reviews can be doctored. Look for that license. So you're looking for that certificate saying, I've been to medical school, I've passed my boards. In other words, I'm not going to hurt you. That's the first step is, are you legitimate? Are you licensed? Especially in the state of Oklahoma, where there are no license regulations, there are still acupuncturists here in the state, just like myself. There's many of us, and we will have our licensure on our websites. We'll have our certifications. We'll have the schools that we've been to. And we love sharing that information when a patient calls and asks.
Right. So in terms of what acupuncture actually does, what does the actual act of acupuncture do for the body?
Well, the body responds to acupuncture through many different ways. Chemically speaking, the body automatically releases endorphins, or beta endorphins, if you want to get more scientific with it. Endorphins are the natural painkillers of the body, and they just make people feel good. They start to relax the individual. There's another thing, another hormone, that's serotonin. Serotonin increases, it helps that feel good mood. It helps people relax. In other words, we're talking about getting the body out of all the stress and getting it back to balance. Homeostasis is what we call that, right? It's where the body can get back in its perfect harmony with what it needs. And acupuncture helps by releasing those hormones, those beta endorphins or endorphins, and serotonin. So there, hopefully that covers too much. Sorry, Billy.
As a infertility treatment, for a therapeutic treatment,
yes,
what does the procedure actually do for men and women who are suffering from infertility?
So once again, it gets back around to that intake. If the individuals are stressed out, most of the time they are, there's cortisol, which is another crazy mean hormone in the system that's brought in by stress. Cortisol, or elevated cortisol, comes from all kinds of things: work, driving in the car, traffic, home life, those kinds of things. So if cortisol is high in the body, that's going to really diminish the hormones that we need to become fertile. So if you're always in fight or flight, that's that cortisol, right? So if you're always running from that, that T-Rex, the survival mode, the body isn't always ready to get pregnant. It's like, whoa, we're trying to survive here. So a lot of times acupuncture will help drop the cortisol levels down, which then brings up endorphins and serotonin, which also helps with depression, by the way. And it brings the body back into balance just automatically. And that's not without that's not even pinpointing the acupuncture points that we use to stimulate other hormones in the body to help reproduction, to help the uterus, to help blood flow to the reproductive organ systems.
Now, that was my next question, because I've heard that, the actual procedure increases blood flow
Yes.
to the uterus, to, the male organs that need to have the blood flowing and healthy sperm levels and things like that. Is that right?
That's right. That's right. In fact, there's a couple of resources out there, Billy, that there's research that's been done on this. This isn't just like hearsay and this just magically happened, but there's research. What is it? Stanford University of Medicine has done a lot of research on this. Harvard Medical has done. These are big names, so they've done a lot of research, and they found that acupuncture itself does stimulate endorphins, serotonin, and then increases blood flow to the reproductive organ systems. And we've also seen it, I've seen it personally with years of working with fertility, where we've got a lining issue. Uterine lining is not thick enough. That's what I hear a lot. And through testing, we do working with co-managing with fertility clinics, they'll be testing that lining. They're looking at the lining and the thickness of it. And we'll see through acupuncture, as well as proper diet and mindset, that we can get that patient relaxed. The lining does thicken up through testing. And that's how the fertility clinics know it's time to pull the trigger on Les. You're ready for transfer, or whatever we're looking at as far as fertility, because there's many different layers to it. Yes, acupuncture does increase blood flow, increases lining. And that's the healthy part. Blood flow needs to be in those organ systems for the proper nutrients to be in that organ, for sperm, for motility, for uterine lining, as well as the hormone systems to balance out and make sure that the FSH and LH, those hormones which are talked about a lot in fertility, are balanced and ready.
Let me ask specifically about male factor. What can you tell me about Eastern medicine treatments for male factor infertility?
A lot of it comes down to cortisol, stress hormones, as well as diet. And there are some activities that we have to avoid as men, even the clothing that we wear, right? So things can be restrictive. Blood flow, once again. Proper temperature is another thing that has to be managed. So inflammation in a male will cause too much heat internally. So we have to look at these factors. If an individual is eating inflammatory foods, maybe for them, there's constant inflammation, digestive issues, they have high blood pressure. We start to look, that's that consult again, Billy. When we start to look at those internal factors of, are you getting proper sleep? In other words, is your body healing? Are you eating the right foods? Or is there an inflammatory response causing, a lot of people know this when they're going through fertility, or they learn real quick that men need to stay away from hot baths and saunas and all these things to keep their body temperature a little bit cooler. So organ systems that are actually on the outside of the body get proper circulation and can cool off and regulate thermally. So that's something that we'll talk about, but acupuncture also increases blood flow for men around the genital area, but will drop cortisol levels. And we can also help with inflammation in the body itself. Once again, we kind of get back around to that serotonin, which helps bring out inflammation and helps increase digestion and sleep and cognitive function. So it helps our brain work better too.
I had no idea. Because see, for me, for this personal, for us, it was male factor on my end.
Gotcha.
The motility and what was it, babe? Endocrinology. What was the other one? Motility and what? Morphology were just, they were stupid. They've been dormant for almost 10 years.
Right.
And then, but whenever when we did my sample after my vasectomy reversal,
Mhm.
I had 287,000 million sperm, which is huge
Yeah.
for being dormant for almost 10 years. So had I known this, probably would have probably done this myself at that time, because I was stressed out. So um,
Mhm.
as far as some myths, what are the most common myths that you hear about Eastern medicine, acupuncture? What are the things that whenever someone comes in and they sit down and say, "Hey, I heard this, this, and this," how do you dispel that? What are the things that you hear the first? And give me like the top two.
The top two concerns, and I'll speak for Oklahoma,
Okay.
is that there's a spiritual connection with acupuncture. People are afraid of like there's a spiritual connection with actual medicine itself, and that's how it's supposed to work. So I don't know that I believe in this. So it probably won't work for me. I hear that a lot, and that's just not true. Unfortunately, there's these myths about a spiritual connection. There's not. There's no sacred prayers that we do in the back, and there's nothing like that. Personally, I'm a Christian, I'm an ordained minister. But other than that, there's actually no connection spiritually. So that's a fear. As minor as it may sound, it's a big deal. So you don't have to believe in it to work. Your body works naturally on its own. There doesn't have to be an acupuncture spiritual energy to perform. It doesn't work that way. And the other thing is, does it work? Because I've heard it doesn't work. And I've had patients come in and say, I looked this up online, and there's doctors that say that acupuncture doesn't work. It's just all fake and it's sham. And I'm here because it's my last resort, because I'm hopeful, but I've already read up on it and it doesn't work. That's what the pros say. And I have to dispel those by saying, what pros are saying it? Are they a doctor of Oriental medicine, or are they someone who's never studied the medicine, who's never seen the research, but maybe they're a physician in your PCP. Maybe they're not familiar with acupuncture, and to err on the side of safety, they say, I don't know that it works. And that's very difficult for some patients to get over, because they look up to their doctor and they say, well, whatever my doctor says has got to be, we're back to the spiritual part, the gospel of my body. And that's actually not true. Western medicine is starting to learn what Eastern medicine is. And in fact, that's being taught in medical schools now. Western medicine, so your general practitioners, they know what acupuncture is. The new ones are starting to get a brief draft on how it works so we can co-manage better. So that's two of my big ones. There's a whole list, as you can imagine, Billy,
Right.
of things that people ask depending on their own personal experience, as well as when they've had a problem with fertility. There's a mental block there, and they feel like this isn't possible. But I'm gonna if I give this a try, will it work? They're losing hope, essentially, like you mentioned before. They need to understand that their body does work just fine. In some instances, there are major issues that have to be corrected. All of us doctors of Oriental medicine are trained to identify those and co-manage them with their physician, whether they're working with a fertility clinic or they're just working, on their own, trying to figure this information out.
So at what point would you recommend a family that's struggling contact a doctor of Oriental medicine?
I think anytime that someone starts to have a problem getting pregnant, anytime the family starts to have a problem and they start to look around, if you're looking at IVF, if you're looking at fertility clinics, if you're starting to ask questions because maybe it hasn't happened like it's supposed to, that's the same time that you would want to start looking into a doctor of Oriental medicine. You want to do it in conjunction with any other traditional medicine physicians. We like to co-manage, Billy. We're very open-minded. In other words, it's not just acupuncture is not how we, that's the single-minded way. We don't think that way. That's another misconception. We are not just alternative. We look at whatever's going to be best for that patient and that family to succeed. So you probably need to start looking for us right as soon as you start to figure out there's probably an issue, or maybe there's something wrong.
Well, I got 10 minutes left on this call, so let me ask you one more question. In regards to, you said co-managing.
Mhm.
When a patient comes in and they're saying, hey, my doctor doesn't believe that this is going to be a good thing, but I really want to try it.
Yes.
How do you help set that patient's mind at ease, knowing that it's something their doctor may not highly recommend, but you knowing that it's beneficial? How do you help merge those two mindsets together?
Well, and that happens a lot, Billy. It does. It happens a lot. And I'll just tell the patient, it's okay. What I do need from you is I'll need, and I'm talking to the patient on this, I need your blood work, your current blood work. We want to look at the hormones. We want to look at everything internally and hormonally, what's going on in your body. And we can still work with you, even though the physician doesn't believe it, it's not going to stop the body from getting the results. And that patient can continue to go to their physician and get testing and work with them. And then bring us the lab work, bring us over the information, and we'll make adjustments what we need to, because acupuncture is very versatile. We can help hormones increase, decrease, or find that balance. And we don't need the other physician's help. Yeah, Billy, for thousands of years, people have been getting pregnant. And a lot of it comes down to just finding balance in the body. Acupuncture does that with or without the help of some other physicians being involved. But I still like to co-manage whether that physician knows it or not. So a lot of times a patient will come in and say, my doctor says this, and my blood work says this, and they're not matching up. And I'll say, let's take a look at it. And sometimes I'll have to feed information to that patient. And I'll tell them, go back and tell your doctor this, this, and this. And that will trigger your doctor to go, oh, maybe we need to look at this. In other words, we don't have to bump egos. I don't have to call the doctor and say, hey, look, dude, you need to do this. It's not necessary. Having that relationship with the patient is something that I really pride myself on. I know a lot of us practicing this medicine, we love that personal relationship with the patient, and being able to relay information to that patient and give them the words they need to discuss these issues with their PCP or a fertility clinic is it's something that's very beneficial for the patient. I will say this, a lot of fertility clinics work directly with acupuncturists. So like the clinic I mentioned earlier in St. Louis, and they have a clinic now in Tulsa.
Is that MCRM by chance?
That is MCRM.
Okay.
They recommend acupuncture, and in St. Louis, the patients, the ladies get acupuncture before and after